Hello. Have you ever felt pulled towards someone, like with a force you couldn't explain? An obsession. Maybe it felt electric, intoxicating, and also maybe utterly involuntary. Today we're talking about limerence, a psychological state where your thoughts kind of loop endlessly in a state where maybe the other person, where hope, fantasy, hijack possibly logic, and where we're craving for reciprocation that may never come, or maybe we ultimately realize was not meant to ever happen. It's more than a crush, it's consuming often for people, but it can fuel or feel like, let's say, destiny, like we're trying to fulfill our destiny in a way we don't understand. But it's not the same as love, because love, we could say, is built on mutual care and commitment. Well, limerence is fueled often by longing, uncertainty, and even possibly a bit of imagination. So, in this episode, we're going to be talking with Amanda McCracken. She's explored this topic in detail, and we're going to be talking about what limerence really is, how it takes hold, and understanding the impact, and maybe how to free ourselves from it if we're so entwined. So, thank you, Amanda, for joining me.
Thank you, Diane. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
So, limerence, where did that become a topic that you found intriguing?
Well, it was actually when I was with my therapist, and I'd
Mhm.
been with her for several years, and she was like, all of a sudden, she was like, you know what? I think what you've been experiencing is limerence. And she herself had only become familiar with that term, just recently when she told me that. And that's how I originally learned about it, and I thought, "Holy cow, what is this?" And I went down a rabbit hole researching, and I realized that had really guided a lot of my life, romantic pursuits, in the past, and um, realized I had to dive into this some more and hopefully help other people unwind themselves from it.
Let's get your definition. How would
Well,
you
you
describe
you you shared
limerence?
you defined it pretty well. I mean, the thing is, there's it was coined in the late '70s by Dorothy Tenov, who was an experimental psychologist.
Mhm.
And from what I've read, it kind of got left in the dust with and attachment studies took over. Um, and it's only recently, I would say, it seems like in the last 5 years or so, I don't know, blame it on the pandemic, like everybody else, blames a lot on. It kind of started getting a lot more attention.
Mhm.
And like a lot of, I mean, what you said was true. It's kind of this psychological state of ruminating about someone you've put on a pedestal. Now,
Mhm.
some people argue there are two different kinds of limerences. That
Mhm.
there's a romantic limerence and a platonic. Most of what gets a lot of attention is the romantic limerence, and that's what I focused on. And that's what I experienced. Um, and it can become like an obsessive rumination, thinking
Mhm.
about this person. Sometimes people call it like a person addiction. And it's never really the real person. It's this idealized version that you have in your head. You've
Mhm.
ignored all their flaws,
Mhm.
and you've heightened the talents that you see in them. And it can be it can create this euphoria, of and then it can also create these major lows, this fear of
Mhm.
rejection. So it may be somebody who doesn't even know you exist, or it may be somebody that you're hooking up with, and you're getting those highs of when they text you back periodically. Maybe it's a coworker and they cast you a glance and you get that euphoric high. Um, and then and like you said, it's fueled by uncertainty. So once that person knows and they've said, I'm not interested, or, ideally, "Oh, yeah, I have it for you too," this kind of sense
Mhm.
of limerence. this feeling as if it's love, but it's not really love. But once that is burst, once the uncertainty goes away, psychologists say then limerence goes away.
Mhm.
But in today's dating world
Now
with
now would you say when that is either burst with, "Yes, I'm interested," or "No, I'm not"? Either one, I guess we could say if it continued after "No, I'm not," we could say that goes into maybe an unhealthy obsession. Or is it also that when the person says, "Well, yes, I am," the fantasy fades?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You got it. Um, so I think I think a lot of people dance around saying, "No, I'm not interested," right? They
Mhm,
ghost you, which leaves a
mhm.
lot more uncertainty. That maybe them ghosting you is like, "Hey, I'm letting you know I'm not interested by not responding." But, the person who's in limerence can create all kinds of reasons why perhaps you haven't responded, and see connections where there aren't necessarily connections.
Just out of curiosity, what do you if you if you were to talk to someone and they said, "Well, I've been ghosted."
Mhm.
I mean, I'm pretty hardcore on that. I'd say, "Move on." Go live your life. Someone's clearly not interested and you need to live your life. And if they're meant to be, they're going to reappear.
Yeah, man, I struggled with that for a
Mhm,
long time, even despite my father being like, "Cut bait, move on," you know?
mhm,
And I think ADHD really heightens limerence too, so in my brain,
mhm,
I would think of all these possible connections and try to figure it out like it was a puzzle, and,
mhm,
I feel like just moving on without an answer for some people is just not okay, but that's kinda
mhm,
what it boils down to. But if you wanna reach out and specifically ask a question, just say, "Are you interested, yes or no?" Back to, like, 3rd grade, little
mhm.
notes. I think that's better than just staying in limerence, you know?
Well, I think that's really a healthy approach. I mean, that's what I would tell either of our kids or anybody I would counsel. I would say, ask yes or no. What do you have to lose by getting a yes or no answer? But an interesting thing is a lot of people don't want to get to a yes or no. They want to avoid the yes or no because they can stay in this uh, illusory world or fantasy or state of limerence. Um,
Mhm.
and I'm not using them necessarily as one and the same. I'm using them as three potentially different things where you can rationalize. And rationalization is a big thing that people bring into relationships. Rationalizing someone else's behavior, giving them excuses.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun. Like I said back with ADHD, it's kind of fun to like try to figure somebody out, right? Without giving them the chance to say, "No way, I'm not interested in a relationship," or, "It's a bad timing for me," or whatever they might say. It's sometimes it's more fun to kind of like hang out in that fantasy world of what if.
It's so funny you say that because I say when someone's every so often someone will say, "Well, what do you think the biggest awareness of getting older is?" I'm like, "Well, I have no patience to play the games anymore. If I want the answer, I ask it directly. And if you can't give it to me directly, I probably need to move on."
Yeah.
So it's a funny thing. I think sometimes I almost think that stage is an important phase of youth and development and understanding ourselves because you are in trying to understand another in some way, we're trying to understand ourselves. We only can
Mhm.
see things from our perspective, our perceptions, our feelings, our thoughts that we project onto other people one way or another because we're coming from our frame of reference to understand someone.
Right.
So if
Right. And
someone does something that we don't get, we're like rationalizing it from, well, I wouldn't do that. And if I did do that, it was probably because blah XYZ.
right, right. And I don't think I really knew, I mean, I talk a lot in some of my essays in my book about how I chase these unavailable
Mhm,
men, unavailable in multiple ways. And because it was kind of a safe place to be because I could stay in
mhm,
that guessing zone.
mhm.
And any
And lack
actually
of commitment, which can get
yeah,
scary.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, any really nice guys that were kind of like arms wide open, I really like you. I see all these great qualities about you. Then
Mhm,
I was like, I'm hitting the road. I'm out of here.
mhm,
So I didn't really even know until, when I look back now at my husband and his interactions with me was very transparent and very like, I am interested in you and follow up with text, pick me up at the airport. I was like, when is the other shoe gonna drop?
uh-huh,
Like what's wrong here? And that was what was right. He went to my therapist with me,
mhm,
and a friend of mine even said, that seems odd. And I'm like, no, that's great.
mhm,
But it took me a long time to get to a point where that felt right because for so
mhm.
long that was so unfamiliar to the my path that I had continually carved out chasing these unavailable people.
How would you describe the path with the unavailable people?
Like, w the path in general for people or my path?
Either.
Okay. Um, well, oh man, that's a hard question. Not sure where to go with that. Um, I guess, I mean, I can share a little bit of my story.
Sure.
Um, and, um, I mean, I think from a young age, even like junior high, even 3rd grade, I had crushes on these guys in class who were one in particular, Jeff was his name in 3rd grade, and, I mean, I had a crush on him through high school, and
Mhm,
I just always would, go after these, like, I guess, guys that I felt were, to be revered or something like that,
mhm,
so it was a safe place. I could stay down here. I would put them e even higher than other people saw them,
mhm,
and then as a competitive athlete, it became kind of a goal. Like not only did I have races to run, I had men to pursue and to prove
mhm,
myself to. It sounds
mhm,
horrible, right? But
mhm,
especially for women to talk about this, unrequited love, doesn't look attractive, especially
mhm,
in Hollywood. You don't see that. It's usually like the dudes that are, chasing this unrequited love interest. And
mhm.
that's okay. Like, who's the guy from Say Anything? When he's got the big ghetto blaster on his
Oh,
shoulder from the 1980s? Like, he's cool, but, like, when women do that, it's not attractive at all, but that's kinda what I was told, from a young age. I could, like, um I mean, I grew up in, like, what was called, like, the alpha females,
Mhm,
going to high school in the 90s, and I was told I could pursue athletics, I could pursue academics, I could pursue whatever it was, professionally. But, it just didn't translate when it came to dating.
mhm.
And so anyways, so my path became well worn, I think, even early on in like,
Just out of curiosity, why do
yeah,
you think that is, if you were going to speculate?
why do I think what is?
Why do you think it is that I was told, go go to college, go have a career, go be an athlete, go do all these things, but it didn't translate into dating life?
Well, I think I was told that because that was the voice of the culture, like Salt and Pepper singing about like, "I can take somebody home and it's none of your business." Like that was
Mhm,
just it was culturally, cool. I had T-shirts that, were feministic and so forth, but I think it didn't work from what I've understood talking to sociologists who studied hookup culture was that hookup culture is still patriarchy in disguise. So
mhm,
it made women think that they were in some kind of control because they could go out and do whatever they wanted, but it uh it still kind of backfired, I think, in terms
mhm.
of
I do
potentially.
agree. I mean, I do think there was a big backfire if you take the advent of the birth control pill, and women thinking, "Okay, I can go have sex with whoever I want," and not take into account that maybe that's really not what you want to be doing. Maybe that's something you're seeking or trying to find within yourself, a search, because it's merging with this fantasy world. So I think it's a pretty complex but intriguing topic of where I think feminism went very wrong.
Yeah, I mean, people say like there's some,
Unpopular opinion, but I do think it's worth
yeah, the
exploring.
sexual revolution kind of backfired, they say, because it didn't really free women.
Mhm.
Um, so and yeah, I remember one specific instance in college where I hooked up with this really hot soccer player when I was studying abroad.
Mhm.
And I remember afterwards feeling like, "Oh, I should feel really good about myself because
Mhm.
I felt so desired by this really hot male."
Mhm.
And at the same time, I felt really, like, discardable, you know?
Mhm.
And he made me feel very discardable over the next couple months too, even though every once in a while we would hook up. So I had this,
Mhm.
like, I was like, "Oh, I am desired by this really hot guy," but yet I feel really icky about it all. So
Well, you said something interesting that, he made me feel discardable. But when we're in that kind of state and we're in a state of limerence, we're discarding ourselves.
yes. Yeah, we're kind of giving up our own voice and I think our own value to
Mhm.
put somebody else higher than us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And when that's repeated, I almost think it's kind of like sometimes I think there's a level of pain in the repetition of that kind of emotional management, because it is a form of how we manage a set of emotions along with hormones and growing up and taking on responsibility. And now I have to be, I'm supposed to be get through school. I'm supposed to be responsible. I'm supposed to take care of myself. I'm supposed to, think about, dating in a more committed sense. So it's a rush at the same time. You have, because of birth control pills, you have the possibility to have sex with strangers or people you think are going to be more than they are, when in fact you don't know them at all.
mhm. Yeah, and something else that we didn't bring up also is about, I think Limerence is also a really safe place for perfectionists to hang out.
Mhm.
Um,
Interesting. Tell me
yeah,
about that.
because, I think another thing I was told is don't settle. Like, especially now I'm this girl going to college in the late 90s, you can pursue whatever you want, but don't settle. You
Mhm.
got all the time in the world. You can hook up with whoever you want, but don't settle. Explore, play the field, and
That's
um
such a mixed message.
yeah, yeah.
And I think it's a confusing message, and you see it almost every day on social media. And I think we see it with the divide that is going on between, 20s and 30 somethings, where they don't understand why they're having such a hard time, you know, finding, finding a mate that is another imperfect human being just like I am. But
Yeah.
it's that don't settle, go play the field. And then you hear you I hear people I speak with in their 20s and 30s talk about body counts. Well, they have this body count or that body count. I'm like, "Oh my god." You know?
Like how many people they've hooked up with?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like at least the news says that people in their 20s are hooking up less.
Mhm.
Um, but I do think that social media and online dating, even though even that's kind of getting kicked to the curb a little bit, um, at least the news says, has only increases that sense of don't settle. There's always
Mhm.
somebody better out there if you keep swiping, if you keep
Mhm.
dating, there's somebody else. And then, social media, we only see the perfect family Christmas pictures.
Mhm.
So, um, yeah, so there's
So
the
let's talk about
perfectionist.
staying in that state of perfection. What does that look like?
Um, well, do you want me to get into the abstinence piece of
Sure. Yeah.
it? So for listeners who don't know, which probably they don't, I have written about and kind of like analyzed the crap out of myself regarding a long journey of abstinence. So I didn't have sex until I was 41. And originally it was, a commitment I made in church, went to, a ring ceremony in the early-ish mid 90s. And
Mhm.
for me at the time, I was like, oh, this is cool. Just another goal. I'll probably be married in my 20s in college. I'll meet the guy of my dreams and move on and have sex then in marriage. And then
Mhm.
that didn't exactly happen because when I hit, I was in the peak of purity culture in the 90s. And then also when I went to college, I was hitting the peak of like hookup culture just really taken
Mhm.
off. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll just keep pushing that goal. At least I want to wait till a loving and committed relationship.
Mhm.
I'll hook up, I'll do these other things, but I'm going to reserve sexual intercourse, at least one thing, for this you know, relationship that I envision.
Mhm.
And then I got close in my mid 20s with a guy who was in the military, West Point grad, and even said to him, okay, I'm ready to have sex. But
Mhm.
we weren't actually even ever living in the same town. So, in some ways, it was still this idealistic relationship, right?
Mhm.
Um, and he said no. And it was probably about a week or two before he actually deployed again.
Mhm.
So at the time I was like, "Oh my gosh, it took me forever to actually get to this point. I'm
Mhm.
gonna reel it back in, take my heart off that hook and I'm gonna hold on tight." Um, and in retrospect, I think actually that guy was I give him a lot of kudos because he could have
Mhm.
said yes. Who knows what he
Mhm.
was thinking? Maybe he didn't want to. Maybe he didn't think I really wanted to. Maybe he wasn't sure what he could actually offer when he got back from the
Mhm.
Middle East. And, I kinda went on a dating spree after that for, like, a decade, um,
Mhm.
and, um, and it only continued to reinforce this pattern of, chasing after these unavailable people. I'd gotten really close with somebody who actually did love me and was available, and it didn't work. So, um, it took me a while to get back to that place,
Tell
plus
me what
a
that
bit of a
dating
therapy.
period looked like. So you were dating, you're going out on a date. I hear a lot of people say, listen, by the second or third date, if we're not having sex, we're not having a third, fourth date. So what does that look like? You're not
Yeah, so
having sex with people, you're putting them on a pedestal. Are you actually dating them?
Well, so yeah, a lot of I did a lot. I joined, like most of the different dating apps, starting with Match.com, eHarmony, Plenty of Fish, eventually Bumble when that came out, um, and um, and then other ways I was going out or meeting guys, of course, maybe at the
Mhm.
bar or at a triathlon race or whatever. And so some of them were genuine dates. I mean, then they
Mhm.
turned into like hookups. And I would say, yeah, generally, probably at least by the time I got to the fifth or sixth date, and they weren't having sexual intercourse, they were kind of like, I think they thought they could sway me or something,
Mhm.
or they felt manipulated. I had one
Mhm.
guy who was a bouncer at a strip club actually that I went out with for about a month, and he got really angry. One night
Mhm.
in the middle of the night, he got up and just left.
Mhm.
And I felt bad. I felt guilty. In fact, I
Mhm.
even in one essay I'd written in the New York Times, "Does my virginity have a shelf life?" One guy had emailed me and said, um, you're selfish. You should
Mhm.
really the next guy who comes along, even if he's not willing to commit or love you like you want, you should give that to him.
Mhm.
Um, so anyways, I mean, I was always in my head, whether it was
Mhm.
about sex or um I don't know, I overthink everything. So
Mhm.
I'm not saying that I'm not how would I say? I'm not I don't deny or I don't let me say it differently. I don't regret um waiting to have sex in a committed and loving relationship, which is what I eventually did with the man who I eventually married. But I certainly regret chasing all of these unavailable guys and putting myself in situations where I continually felt really crappy about myself, discarded, and
And
that
I'm
became the
trying to
story.
understand,
Mhm.
sex is a very broadly defined term.
Right.
You said you were with a guy who was a, bouncer at a strip club, and he's in bed and he leaves in the middle of the night.
Mhm.
So where did you define where sex began and ended? Is it intercourse or
Yeah, that's what I said earlier. I said
okay.
sexual intercourse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So
Okay.
that's yeah. So yeah, I was fooling around and doing other stuff.
Mhm.
But that's where I drew the line.
Got it.
Uh, no anal sex. I'll throw
Got
that
it.
out there too.
Got it.
Um, so yeah, that was I mean, I had to draw I feel like it because the dating world, there's so much uncertainty, there's so much ambiguity and few people actually holding themselves accountable to actually follow through with people that I just felt like I had to create some rules for myself in an environment
Mhm.
where I didn't feel like there were any rules anymore. I wanted to
Mhm.
feel like something was still sacred, right? I wanted
Mhm.
to create that or at least and feel like yeah, that's what I wanted. And so that's uh that's what I did. That's where I drew the line.
And how do you define the line drawn of, um, let's say when you felt you were in a state of limerence versus not?
Well, I mean, I really didn't know what I was going through back
Do
then.
got it. Mhm.
But
How
I
would
think
you
you
have
kind of
how would you have defined it back then before a
I mean,
therapist
I
said, "Well,
described
I
it
think
more
it's
as just like
limerence."
intense crushing.
Okay.
Um, and there were levels, like there were certain in limerence they refer to the person like I was the limerent, and then there was the limerent object, right? The limerent
Mhm.
object
We just lost
person
your
you put on the
internet.
pedestal.
Hold on, we need to go back on that
So
because
for
we just lost
me,
your internet.
I would kind of like have like
Amanda?
can you hear me? Can
I
you hear
can
me now?
now. Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure where I cut out at.
Okay. Um, and you're gonna be my first edit. I'm gonna cut out that section there.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Um, okay, so we're talking about how would you have defined limerence, not knowing it was called limerence in your earlier dating ages?
I think I would was calling it like these intense crushes,
Mm-hmm.
basically. Um, Even in high school, I had friends who would be like, refer to my love interest as flavor of the month. Um, so from one, jumping from one to the next, like hyperfixating, again, kind of goes back to this ADHD thing. And um, I think you did mention it earlier. If the person showed interest in me, the limerence kind of popped, right? They're not as interesting anymore. Or if they said, "I'm really not interested in you," I would say it would fizzle versus pop because
Mm-hmm.
I'm a competitive person. I'm going to prove my worth to you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so as much as I hate that, I talk about that because it's not an attractive quality. I know
Mm-hmm.
I look ridiculous describing myself as having done that, but I know women out there who do that and men too, right? That
There's
just
a
say,
very famous line in a song you might be too young to know, but it's in Jane's Addiction, and the line is, "I only know they want me. I want them if they want me,
I
which
only
is,
know they want me. Say that again?
I only know they want me. I want them if they want me, which is kind of the
Hmm.
reverse of
Yeah,
limerence. It's
that's rare, I think.
well, it's knowing someone wants, someone may want you, but you're not choosing that they're a good choice for you. So it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah,
It's
you
a
cut out a little
form of
bit right there, but I think I
yeah, you keep cutting out. It's a lack of connection, literally and figuratively right now.
right, right, exactly. I'm like, "You talking about the internet? You talking about love?" Yeah, I mean, limerence is all over, like, songs, especially in the '80s. Maybe just because I like these songs in the '80s, but, like, I mean, like, Cheap Trick, I think it was Cheap Trick saying,
Yeah.
"I want you to want me," and, One Way or Another. That's
Yeah.
isn't that Blondie, maybe?
Yeah.
Um,
Blondie.
I mean, there's, and then there's, I think there's this great line in Gautier's song, "You can be addicted to a certain kind of sadness."
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about the euphoria in limerence, but there's also this sadness that almost can sometimes feel like, who you are, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
just who I am. I'm gonna be single and crushing forever, and I feel like that can become an identity that, people find difficult to shake loose, just kinda
Mm-hmm.
like that carved path we talked about earlier.
What made you decide to start writing and researching and focusing on this?
Well, so originally, I came across this letter from an old this guy that I dated in college, my
Mm-hmm.
senior year. He was like my best friend in college up until senior year, and we finally started dating. This is not the hot soccer guy. Definitely different. And a couple, things we both went different directions after college, and I was pretty heartbroken. And he, like a year or so after we graduated college, he emailed me this letter. Okay, so then 10 years later, I pulled out this letter that an email that I'd printed out and put um in a desk at my parents' house. And he probably pulled it out over Christmas break or something when I was home. And I was like, I still don't know how to answer these questions. And he had said something about like, it just perplexes me why you seem to be so sexual, but you're not having sex.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was like 34 or so, I was like, I still don't know how to answer these questions. So I started writing, trying to just kind of try to answer these myself and like untangle myself from my own patterns. And so that's what I did. And um, it took me
Can
a
I
while.
can I ask you a second?
Mhm.
Were you very afraid of becoming pregnant? How do you feel about
No,
pregnancy? No.
no, I wasn't. I was like, there's birth control out there. Yeah, that was never a fear.
Mhm.
It was a fear of making a mistake with the wrong guy, I feel like.
Mhm.
And I built it up for a long time, that this is my goal and this is what I want to achieve.
Mhm.
But I was self-sabotaging, like I said, by dating people who were never going to commit and love me. Yeah, so I started writing based off that letter, I feel like, and then started researching, talking to other late in life virgins. I had others reaching out to me, and then the limerence thing came along, a couple, only more recently, I would say. Um, and trying to figure, and then that made sense of why I think I had waited so long. Limerence had become a safe place to hang out, to protect myself from kind of the intimacy that I truly desired, but I was like real emotional intimacy,
Mhm.
um, not like, hooking up one night stands kind of intimacy.
Mhm.
So that I figured out was like how I had navigated most of my dating life.
Mhm. And when you started to write this down, did you do it with the intention of speaking with other people, other women that may have experienced something comparable in their dating life or their emotions? And
Yeah, I certainly felt like if I was going through, if I was trying to figure stuff out, I might as well
Mhm.
share it with other people too. So hopefully it would, help them. And began speaking with neuroscientists, psychologists, sociologists, just trying to unravel all of these pieces, psychiatrists on grief and
Mhm.
heartbreak. And it just became this really interesting, um, you know, web of ideas and information. So um, that's what I tried to pull together in my book for folks that I had, you know, done that work in order to hopefully help somebody else. I mean, other people have done that for me. I'm trying to think of like one of the coolest books I read was called Dreams of Love I think I have it over here, like Dreams of Love and Fateful Encounters or something like that by
Mhm.
Ethel Person. She was a psychiatrist. Oh
Mhm.
my gosh, that thing is chock full of really fascinating information culturally,
Mhm.
psychologically. She was a Freudian analyst. That
Mhm.
thing cracked me wide open. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I wish I could have read this long time ago." But
What did you learn? What were the big takeaways?
well, I think the coolest thing I pulled from that actually was this term called lover shadow, which was
Mm.
coined by H.G. Wells like a long
Mhm.
time ago. And it's this idea that like even as children, we create this almost this ideal image of um, that person we fall in love with, and that follows us throughout our life, and it might shift in different ways. And we see people, and we almost we kind of project them onto this lover shadow, or see them, tweak them in a certain way to say, "Oh, this is the one." Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And I don't understand all of it, but it makes sense, especially from like related to your early attachments and how that shapes who that lover shadow is that you become attracted to.
Mhm.
Um, so that I thought once I look back at some of the patterns of different men, there's definitely a pattern. So
Mhm. A pattern of the type of person you were attracted to?
yes, yeah, thank you. Yeah, the type of person that I was attracted to.
Can you define those characteristics? And do you think
Um,
they're common
yeah,
to
I would
others
say
or exclusive
elusive.
to
They were elusive. You know, they they didn't communicate very well, so I called that mysterious, but they really did not communicate very well. Um, they weren't great at expressing, I would say that physical affection, great, but like emotionally expressing themselves or their interests, they weren't great at, or they pulled away. There were certain physical characteristics, I think, when I look back at some of these guys that were 6'1", 6'2", dark hair, dark eyes, kinda chiseled features. Maybe it was,
Mhm.
like, this obsession I had with, like,
A lot.
Superman and Clark
Mhm.
Kent, you know, from was obsessed with that show in high school. Lois and Clark: Adventures of Superman with Dean Cain and
Mhm.
Terry Hatcher. You know, you just never know how all of this stuff shapes who we're chasing after, or what kind of image we think is gonna be perfection.
How do you think your communication was during that phase of life? Were you emotionally connecting or were you looking for someone to connect first? Like keep and so thinking, well, I'm going to keep chasing them. I'm going to hold them on this pedestal. And then when I get a response, then I'll also connect. Or which way was it?
Um, I think I mean, more I usually was more of, like, the pursuer. I mean, I
Mhm.
was it was obvious I was interested in them, if that's
Mhm.
kinda what you're getting at. But I also had this deep fear of being too much,
Mhm.
and coming on too strong, and, you know, and there was at one point, I remember my therapist saying, you know, "You might be" she didn't say exactly this, but, "You might be too much for someone, but you'll be the right amount for the right person."
Mhm.
And it was true, you know? I mean, still sometimes my husband can be like, "Okay," you know? Um, whatever
Did
he
you
might
have
say, but
were you fearing rejection during that time?
yeah, for sure. So I would hold back I mean, I write about even, like, hiding my joy being with
Mhm.
some guy because I was afraid if he saw, like, the smile that just wanted to burst out of my face being with him, that he would be like, "What's wrong with her?" You know,
Mm.
she's gonna be clingy, she's gonna be too, whatever. So I was definitely obviously the interested one, but I would also really try to put a lid on things. That's why writing felt good because I could
Mhm.
get it all out, you know. Um, so
What are the biggest takeaways that you think you've learned from exploring this phase of life, this aspect of personality from either yourself or others you've spoken with?
oh, let's see. The most interesting thing I think about when I think about like what I'll tell my daughter, right? Because that's
Mhm.
kind of what it boils. You have a daughter,
Yes, and a son.
um, and a son.
So I
Yeah,
see both sides of dating
yeah. And how old are they?
in their 20s.
Okay. Um, so this is so corny, right? Even I remember when my therapist told me this, and she said, you know, you have to believe you are worthy of love in
Mhm,
order to, um, in order to start receiving it.
mhm,
And I said, "You know, you tell everybody this, right?" And she said, "Yeah, but you really need to believe this. You really need to start writing down." She said, gave me the best homework she gave me, and I like homework because I like to be
mhm,
an achiever, was, she had me write down, "I am ready for and worthy of a deeply loving and intimate relationship."
mhm,
And just start writing that down every night, and I have this journal still where I wrote it down, and that I mean, it really, really, really does boil down to that. Like, if I didn't think I was worthy of this love, or that I hadn't even, or differently, that I had to prove myself, I had to prove this and get the validation. When I didn't look at love that way,
mhm,
which is not how my relationship was with my husband, then I was able to actually receive it.
mhm,
And it was really hard for me to receive love. I remember when my husband was one night cooking this great pasta dinner, and he was kind of coming in close and physically, and was sweet. And I was like, you have to back off. Otherwise, I'm out of here. I'm going to fly.
mhm,
And
mhm,
um, I wasn't ready yet to receive his love. And it
mhm,
really, really did boil down to that. It's so
mhm,
corny, but if I can instill that in my daughter, that she really believes she is worthy of love and she doesn't have to perform and prove it to someone, then
mhm.
I think I will have done a good job parenting.
I would think that's a great message to send to a daughter or a son. I mean, I think
Mhm.
that's a priceless lesson for anyone to learn. Um, what's the name of your book?
When longing becomes your lover,
Mhm.
I have it right here. This is
Yeah.
like the sales copy because it's not quite out yet.
Okay.
Breaking from infatuation, rejection, and perfectionism to find authentic love, a true story of overcoming limerence.
And who is your book for, and what is the takeaway you want them to have from it?
Oh, good question. My the book is for anyone in there that could be married, that's still
Mhm,
finding themselves longing for something, you know, idealistic outside their own marriage. It could be for women in their 20s or 30s or 40s that are still single and not finding themselves worthy of love, and finding themselves in a pattern of crushing one crush after the other because it's safe, it feels safer than real emotional intimacy. Um, and people who, so my book is part memoir, part research. I don't
mhm,
like reading straight memoir. It bores
mhm,
me. I like stuff that has science woven into it, art, culture, you know, other stuff that I can glom onto and try to connect. So
mhm,
it is also for somebody who likes a good story, but also likes when a writer jumps in and out of the story and weaves
mhm.
in research that says, oh, this is why this was happening. Because that's what I tried to do as I was living it and writing it. And the takeaway message I think I kind of shared was the believing that, you were worthy of love, and also understanding your brain and psychology behind limerence so that you can stop the patterns. It is it is a pattern that you have to break if you want to.
I'm trying to figure out how to phrase the question, because I think it's an interesting thing that you mentioned. You would want a woman, a female, to know that you're worthy of love. And at the same time, we see hookup culture and I have plenty of time to find the right guy. Where does that crossover occur of saying, well, I'm worthy of love, and so maybe I stop with the hookup culture and actually try to connect?
I see what you're saying. It is a tough one.
It's a tough one to verbalize, and I think it's a tough one to find an answer for. But I'm curious as to what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I feel like okay, hookups can be fun, right? It was a fun time in my life too,
Mhm,
but I got to a point where I was doing it so much that even if I wasn't having sexual intercourse, that my body actually got to a point where I was dissociating. And
mhm,
it even got to a certain point, actually, probably when I was like 40, where it would start uh, shaking and I would start crying. It was like like a switch went
mhm,
on. I had no control over it. I could even warn guys before we started hooking up, this might happen. I,
mhm,
I can't, I'm not intentionally doing it. It's my body basically being like, it's had enough.
mhm,
So I think there has to be an awareness that of um what being aware of the situations you're putting in over and over, and
mhm,
how do those hookups make you feel afterwards? And
mhm,
if they make you feel like trash and leave you like searching your phone waiting for a text, that is an awful place to put yourself in over and over. So it is, man, it is a jungle out there, and it is hard, but I think the more that you create your what you define as I guess, like my friend, she had these great cards she would, I think, keep in her purse.
mhm,
How far she would go, what would actually warrant a second date or a third date or
mhm,
spending the night or whatever. And I think some people say, "Oh, you're thinking too much. Just let things happen organically." But overthinking things can also lead to driving yourself freaking crazy. So if you
mhm,
need to draw those barriers for yourself
mhm,
and delineate what makes you feel good and what makes you feel like crap about yourself,
mhm,
then that's important, I think, so that you stop putting yourself in situations that make you feel like trash.
mhm.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think those are great
It's
points.
a tough one. Yeah.
Yeah, but you answered it well. When does your book come out?
It comes out February 10th, so the week
Mhm.
of Valentine's
Oh,
Day.
good timing.
So, yeah, day before my birthday, actually. So it has its own birthday, which is kind of cool.
Oh. Well, do you have any parting words for our audience today, Amanda?
Um, Parting words. Um, you are worthy of love. Write it down, believe it, put it on a Post-it note, put it on your mirror in your bathroom, and say it or write it until you actually believe it.
I think that's an excellent message
Thank you.
and a great one to repeat. My
I
poor
still
kids my poor kids grew up with me writing little Post-it notes and sticking things like that on their mirrors in their bathrooms.
Oh, that's great. For lunch boxes?
No, yeah, lunch boxes, but mirrors in bathrooms, because teenage years, you spend a lot of time looking in the mirror.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great place for it, right.
I
Yeah.
still cut out horoscopes. When I see it's a really good one for their zodiac sign, I'll like, "Oh,
Oh,
this is
that's
really good.
great.
This is not just mom saying your life is going well. Now the stars."
Oh, I love that. I know. It feels good to feel like someone else besides your mom thinks things are
Exactly.
gonna work out sometimes. I went to a psychic too, like I wasn't going to church anymore. I wasn't taking my parents' advice. I went to the psychic and she basically said some of the same stuff, like stop performing and, start being in a place where you can receive love.
Yeah.
So
Well, Amanda McCracken, what a pleasure this has been speaking with you. We've been talking about limerence, and Amanda has a new book coming out in the new year, and I highly recommend you pick it up. There'll be info so you can follow her website so you can keep in touch with Amanda and what she's doing and learn more. She's a prolific writer and has a lot of great thoughts that I think you'll all enjoy. I'm Dian Griesel. This has been the Silver Disobedience Perception Dynamics podcast. I'm recording in Manhattan Center, and I've enjoyed my conversation with Amanda McCracken. Thank you for joining me.
thank you, Diane. Thanks for all the great questions. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you, Amanda. We're going to move over to the green room. Everybody, hit subscribe and don't forget to go visit Amanda's website too. Subscribe.